If I told you that one of the most powerful kings in human history once lived like an animal, walking on all fours, eating grass, and roaring like a wild beast, you might think it sounds like the plot of some dramatic fantasy film. But it isn't fantasy. It actually happened. And it's one of the most mysterious, humbling, and extraordinary stories in the entire Bible. Today, I want to take you deep into the heart of ancient Babylon, into the golden courts of King Nebuchadnezzar, a man whose pride shook the heavens and whose fall became a reminder for every generation that no earthly throne is stronger than God's authority. And trust me, once you dive into this story, you will never look at the word power the same way again. So, imagine this. The sun is blazing over the city of Babylon, the most advanced, wealthy, and breathtaking kingdom the world had ever seen. High walls stretch into the sky. Soldiers in gleaming bronze armor march along the rooftops. Gardens overflow with waterfalls and flowers of every color. And towering above it all is a massive palace shimmering with gold, home of King Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler who conquered nations like snapping twigs between his fingers. He knew no defeat. He feared no army. And in his heart, he believed no one on earth or in heaven could match his greatness. But here's the incredible twist. God was already writing a story for this king. A story that would take him from being the world's most feared conqueror, to a humbled man crying out for mercy. And even though Nebuchadnezzar didn't know it yet, his journey was about to collide with something far greater than all the kingdoms he ruled. It all begins with a young man named Daniel, a wise and faithful servant of God, taken captive from Jerusalem and brought to Babylon. Daniel was different. He didn't bow to false gods. He didn't bend under pressure. He didn't try to impress the king. Instead, he stood firm in truth, love, and obedience to the one true God. And that's why, when Nebuchadnezzar first met Daniel, he sensed something unusual, something pure, something powerful, something divine. One night, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that shook him to his core. Not just a regular dream, this one burned through his mind like fire, leaving him terrified. He calls his advisors, magicians, wise men, and astrologers, demanding answers. But no one can explain it. They all look at each other, hopeless and confused. And then Daniel steps forward. Daniel tells the king the meaning of the dream. He explains that God, the real King of heaven, had revealed it, not because Daniel was special, but because God wanted Nebuchadnezzar to understand something very important. Daniel tells him he is a mighty king, yes, but his power came from God, and God alone. One day his kingdom would fall. Another kingdom would rise. And another after that. And one day, God's eternal kingdom would crush them all and reign forever. Nebuchadnezzar listens, surprised, amazed, shaken, but still proud. Years later, God sends Nebuchadnezzar another dream. A dream so vivid and so mysterious that the king again calls Daniel to interpret it. This time, the dream is about a giant, beautiful tree stretching all the way to heaven. Birds rested on its branches. Animals found shade under it. People around the world were fed by its fruit. But suddenly, a messenger from heaven shouts, "Cut it down." Only a stump remains, chained with iron and bronze, surrounded by dew and grass. The messenger declares that the tree represents a man who will lose his mind, live like a beast, and eat grass like cattle, until he learns that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world. Can you imagine hearing a message like that? A warning so clear it feels like thunder crashing at your feet? Daniel looks at Nebuchadnezzar with deep concern. He knows what the dream means. And he also knows it's a warning, a chance for the king to change. He tells Nebuchadnezzar that the tree represents him. His pride has grown too high. His heart has become hardened. And if he does not humble himself before God, he will fall from his throne, and live like a beast of the field. Nebuchadnezzar listens. He nods. He agrees. He seems moved. But deep down, the pride still burns. 12 months pass. A whole year. And for a moment it looks like maybe the king has changed. Maybe he has learned. Maybe the warning softened his heart. But then comes the moment that changes everything. One evening, Nebuchadnezzar stands on the roof of his palace, looking out over the great city. He built walls that stretched for miles, towering gates, shimmering temples, lush gardens. And he says the words that seal his fate. Is this not the great Babylon I have built with my own hands, by my power, for the glory of my majesty? And instantly before the king can even finish the sentence, God answers. A voice echoes from heaven, declaring that Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom has been taken from him. His authority is stripped. His throne is removed. His mind is no longer the mind of a man. At that very moment, the most powerful king in the world collapses into madness. Guards rush to help him, but he pushes them away. His mind is spinning. He feels the urge to run, to escape, to disappear into the fields. He tears off his royal robes. He flees into the wilderness. And before anyone can stop him, the king has vanished from the palace. Days pass. Weeks. Months. And Babylon is in shock. Their mighty king gone. Rumors spread. Whispers fill the streets. Some claim the king is dead. Others say he's cursed. Others cry that the gods punished him. But Daniel knows what truly happened. God is not destroying Nebuchadnezzar, he is rescuing him from pride. Meanwhile, far away from the city, Nebuchadnezzar roams in the open fields. Rain pours on him. Sun burns him. Dew clings to his hair. He eats grass like cattle. His hair grows long and tangled, like eagle feathers. His nails curl like the claws of a bird. He has no throne. No servants. No crown. No glory. The great king of Babylon has become the beast king. But here is the part that stuns us the most. Even in that madness, God was watching him. God was waiting. God was calling him back. Imagine the slow transformation of his heart during those years spent looking at the sky instead of mirrors, years spent crawling instead of commanding, years spent learning that power comes from God, not from human pride. Nebuchadnezzar was being broken open, but gently, lovingly, so that something new could grow. And one day, after long years of living like a beast, something shifts inside him. Something awakens. He looks up to the heavens. And for the first time in a long time, his mind returns. When Nebuchadnezzar finally lifted his eyes toward heaven after years of silence, wildness, confusion, and wandering, something powerful happened. It was like the clouds above him opened, and for the first time in a long while, he remembered who he was, and more importantly, who God was. His sanity returned, not because he earned it, not because he deserved it, not because he regained strength, but because he finally surrendered. And in that moment of surrender, something sacred awakened inside him. Picture that moment, the once mighty king, kneeling in the field, clothes torn and dirty, hair tangled like eagle feathers hanging over his shoulders, nails grown long like claws, his body thin, fragile, humbled. And yet, for the first time in his life, he feels truly alive, truly aware, truly free. Because now he understands what no throne, no army, no gold, no kingdom could ever teach him. The Most High is the real ruler, and his kingdom never ends. Slowly, Nebuchadnezzar stands. His eyes lift. His hands rise. And he begins to praise the God he once ignored. His voice cracks, trembling, but filled with awe. He says words he never thought he'd speak. His dominion is everlasting. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are nothing compared to him. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the world. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At that moment, the curse breaks completely. The madness ends. His heart settles. His mind clears. And without him realizing it, messengers have already been running from the fields to the palace, shouting, "The king is restored. The king has returned. Nebuchadnezzar is brought back into Babylon." But this time, something is different. The crowd that once bowed out of fear now looks at him in awe and confusion. This is not the proud, fierce, intimidating king they once knew. This is a humbled man. A changed man. A man who has seen the power of heaven and lived to tell the story. His advisors gather. His nobles surround him. His throne is restored. But even as he sits upon it again, Nebuchadnezzar no longer carries himself with arrogance. He doesn't glare with superiority. He doesn't speak with the old fire of pride. Instead, there is softness in his eyes, gratitude in his voice, and something new: humility. Nebuchadnezzar begins ruling with a transformed heart. He is still king, still powerful, still respected. But he no longer thinks the kingdom belongs to him. He knows it was given. And because it was given, it could be taken. That realization becomes his strength, not his fear. And then comes the moment that completes the story, the moment that echoes throughout history. Nebuchadnezzar writes a public declaration, a royal announcement to every nation, language, and people in the empire. He wants everyone, every villager, every soldier, every advisor, every official to know what God did for him. Not to hide his shame. Not to protect his image. But to testify. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of Heaven, he writes, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. That sentence becomes one of the most powerful confessions in the entire Old Testament. A pagan king, a conqueror of nations, a man who once boasted of his own greatness, now stands before the world as a witness to God's mercy. But the story doesn't end with the king alone. It also leaves a message for us, a mirror held up to every heart. Pride is something all of us battle. Pride whispers that we don't need help. Pride tells us we are in control. Pride convinces us that everything we are and everything we have is the result of our own strength. But Nebuchadnezzar's story shows us what pride can do. It can blind us, break us, lead us down a path of confusion. But God does not humble us to destroy us. He humbles us to restore us. Imagine Babylon after the king's return. People whispering to their children, "Do you see that man? That is our king. And God changed his heart." Children telling the story to one another in the streets. Advisors meeting in the palace and shaking their heads, saying, "We've never seen him speak with such wisdom." Even the nobles who once feared him now respect him in a deeper way. Because they see God's fingerprints all over his life. And Daniel, now older, wiser, still faithful, watches all this with gratitude. He remembers the day he warned the king. He remembers the dream. He remembers the fear in his heart for what was coming. And now he sees God's mercy on display, clearer than ever. Nebuchadnezzar becomes a different kind of leader. He uses his influence not to glorify himself, but to testify of God's greatness. He tells other rulers, "Learn from me." He tells his people, "Don't trust in your strength." He warns future generations, "Pride brings a fall, but humility brings restoration." And slowly, the whole kingdom changes. Not everyone becomes a believer. Not everyone follows God. But the influence is deep and undeniable. When the most powerful man on earth bows his heart to heaven, the world pays attention. Now imagine the last months of Nebuchadnezzar's life. A man who once walked like a beast now walks in peace. The same hands that grasped crowns now lift in praise. The same mouth that boasted now blesses. He tells his grandchildren the story again and again. I was the greatest king on earth, he says, but I was nothing without God. I forgot who gave me my power. And when God humbled me, He saved me. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: Nebuchadnezzar's story does not end in tragedy. It ends in redemption. God didn't cast him out forever. God didn't erase him from history. God didn't leave him broken. Instead, God restored him mind, heart, kingdom, and purpose. That is the mercy of God. The grace of God. The patience of God. And even today, thousands of years later, we still tell his story. Not to shame him. Not to criticize him. But to learn from him. Because like Nebuchadnezzar, every one of us needs a moment when we look up. A moment when we say, God, I need you. A moment when we let go of our pride and open our hearts to the one who rules over heaven and earth. And maybe, just maybe, this story is reaching you at exactly the right moment. Maybe there is something in your life that needs surrender. Maybe there is an area where you've been trying to control everything on your own. Maybe God is whispering to your heart the same truth He taught Nebuchadnezzar. Power belongs to God. Wisdom belongs to God. Life belongs to God. And when you trust Him, He restores what pride tries to destroy. So today, as we finish this animated journey, remember this: the Beast King did not stay a beast. He became a believer. A witness. A testimony of God's transforming love. And the God who changed Nebuchadnezzar's heart can change yours too.